Hey kids, I'm so glad that you are joining us today for Freedom Church Kids. Today is our last day for A Maze of Grace. We've been learning this month all about God's amazing grace. Today we're going to be learning about grace for you. I mean, have you ever did something that you needed someone to extend grace to you? Oh, well, I know I have. And today, Miss Danielle's going to tell us how her grandma extended grace to her. But before we hear Miss Danielle's story, let's stand up on our feet and praise Jesus. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Proverbs 3, 5 and 6.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding.
We are on our last week learning about grace. This week is called Grace for You. I would like to start it off with a story that kind of reminded me of what we're talking about this week. So when I was young, probably around your age, probably about 8 to 9, 10 years old, I loved glass dolls. I called them porcelain dolls, but they're very fragile. My grandma used to buy them and store them at her house in the bedroom that I had. So I had like 10 different dolls. She bought them every year for me, sometimes for my birthday and for Christmas. And there's one particular doll that I just loved. She had the prettiest dress. She had pretty makeup on. She even had little glass shoes on her feet. My grandma had this very strict rule. These dolls are not toys. They're for decoration. Well, I was a kid, and having things in your room that aren't toys isn't always nice. So one day, I was usually very good at following that rule. They're not for toys. I'd kind of lay on my bed and stare at my dolls and imagine different things of playing with them coming to life and whatnot. One day, I decided to break the rule. And I decided to grab the doll. I pulled it out of the box, which pretty much destroyed the box. I ripped it up. And I was playing with it. And then all of a sudden, I broke the doll's foot. It broke. It was glass. So it shattered. And I was so mad at myself. I could not believe this beautiful doll that my grandma had got me, I had broke the foot. No wonder Grandma said, "You're not allowed to play with the dolls." So I grabbed the doll. I put it in the box the best I could. The box was already ripped. It was destroyed. I moved the little skirt of the doll, kind of like, moving it around, trying to see so that you couldn't see the foot. Because I didn't want to tell my grandma about it. So I hid it, I put it back on the shelf, and then I didn't tell my grandma. But every time my grandma would come into the room, I started acting funny because I would start freaking out. My grandma's going to see the doll. My grandma's going to see what happened. This went on for weeks and weeks. When I would leave my grandma's house, I would think, oh, she's going to find it. She's going to call me at my mom's house. She's going to call me at my dad's house. I'm going to get in trouble. Years and years went on, and I never told my grandma. Well, years later, so this is probably 20 years after that happened, me and my grandma were talking, and she told me that it wasn't, she heard the doll's foot break. So it wasn't long after it happened. She knew. And she was just kind of sitting there. Is she going to come out and tell me? How is she going to do this? She knows the right thing is to come out and tell me. And I didn't. And you got to think about it. For Grandma, that probably hurt her heart. Not only did I break her rule, but I didn't even trust her to come to her and tell her what I did and ask for forgiveness. There's another story in the Bible that's similar, something that happened to Jesus. So there was a lot of people during Jesus' time. They didn't like what he was saying, what he was doing. They didn't believe he was the Son of God. So there was somebody called a priest or a chief priest that would try to get Jesus in trouble. He wanted to essentially kill him. So one of his 12 disciples, his name was Judas, he decided, I don't think he's the Son of God either. I'm pretty sure he's lying about this. After everything he's seen Jesus do. I don't know why he would think that. But he decided, I'm going to go talk to these people. I'm going to set up a secret meeting. Jesus didn't know about it. And I'm going to sell Jesus to them as a slave so they can do whatever they want to do to him. Pretty sure he knew that what they were going to do to him. So when they came into the garden to get Jesus, we all know what happens. They try to arrest him. One of the disciples cuts one of the people's ears off. Jesus said, "No, we need to stop this fighting. This isn't right." Grabs the ear, put it back on the guy's head, heals him, and Jesus willingly goes with him. Jesus knew what happened. Judas had sold him because Judas came over and kissed him. So he would point out to the people that were coming to get Jesus, this is him. This is the guy that you want. How do you think Jesus felt? His friend, one of his best friends. Yeah, think about it. He's with these guys through thick and thin, and he betrayed him. I'm sure it broke Jesus' heart. But at the same time, just like my grandma, he knew Judas can come to me. Judas can come and confess what he did and get my grace, get my forgiveness. But Judas didn't. He just ended up realizing, I was wrong. Jesus really is the Son of God, and I've betrayed him. He just ended up sitting in despair and thinking, what did I do? And then he died. So he never got to know that if he would have just came to Jesus, told him what happened, and asked for forgiveness, he would have been forgiven. Because Jesus died on the cross for our sins. He died so that all of us could go to heaven one day. He was taking all of our imperfections, because Jesus, we know, he's the only perfect person. We are all imperfect. God designed us that way. So he took all of our imperfections on the cross so that he could give us grace. I have this little guy here today. He's a sad octopus. This is what you're like when you're living in sin, when you're living outside of grace, you're living outside of God's love. It's a horrible place to be. But when we know that we can come to God, come to Jesus, confess our sins, tell him what we did wrong, we get to be a happy octopus. We get to live in God's grace. So I want you guys to pray this week and really think about it. Am I living in God's grace? Do I have God's love and mercy living in my life and giving it to other people? Don't forget, it's not just for us. Grace is for us to give to everybody else. So I hope you guys have a good week and think about this. See you later, guys. Bye.
Sometime before Jesus took his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane, Judas Iscariot, one of Jesus' 12 disciples, went to the chief priests and asked them, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver Jesus over to you?" They paid Judas 30 silver coins to carry out this deed. From then on, Judas was watching for an opportunity to hand over Jesus. After he had finished praying, Jesus was speaking to his disciples Peter, James, and John when he saw Judas approaching with a large crowd following behind. The chief priests and the elders had sent the crowd armed with swords and clubs. Because the people in the crowd did not know what Jesus looked like, Judas arranged a signal so that they would know which person to arrest. Judas said, "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." When Judas arrived at the garden, he walked right up to Jesus, said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus looked at Judas and said, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men in the crowd stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. One of the disciples who came to pray with Jesus in the garden saw what was happening, so he drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. Jesus told his disciple to put his sword away and explained that everything was happening just as it was supposed to and just as it should. Do you think I cannot call on my Father to save me from this? But how then would the Scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? Jesus then turned to those in the angry crowd and said, "Am I leading a rebellion that you have come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. All of this is happening so that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled." As it became clear that Jesus was going to be taken to the chief priests, Jesus' disciples fled in fear of being punished along with him. They abandoned Jesus